this gender for me is intentional.
Welcome to the Fuck Yeah podcast, where we say fuck yeah to high femmes. My name is Robin, and I am here with my ever vibrant co-host, Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
And Sarah, you have any fuck yeahs going on in your life right now?
Ooh, I do. I think that, oh, you know what? Let's keep it sexy.
Yeah, please do.
So I am a big fan of IUDs for a variety of reasons.
Aren't we all?
But, through a variety of circumstances of just like hormonal changes, etc., my girlfriend got an IUD a couple months back, and I thought we were prepared, but we weren't totally prepared for the never-ending period that was going to ensue.
How long now?
It was almost 3 months.
Shut up.
Very light. And so, that's way better than, for a lot of folks, they're getting IUDs to help really extreme bleeding,
Yeah.
which, particularly as like a vegan person, like her iron levels can get really low.
And that's why she got it?
Yes. And it was great that it was addressing fatigue and some of these other health issues that relate to periods for all of us. But a bummer because, our sex
Yeah.
doesn't exist in the same way if she's constantly bleeding. And she has stopped bleeding.
Praise be.
I don't know that it was necessarily that I felt like we were really missing something, but
Right.
like once I got it back, I was like, oh, this is so like this really, really means a lot to me.
Yes.
And I missed all of this.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm happy
So
for
that's
you.
giving me a fuck yeah feeling.
Good. I love that.
Yes.
Well, I'm excited about the interview today. I got to put you on the hot seat, which I find you infinitely interesting, and to hear your thoughts about gender and our relationship and all this was really wonderful. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with all of our listeners. And please, listeners, if you have any comments, corrections, insights, or you want to suggestions, share your own stories. What are you feeling fuck yeah about? We'd love to hear it. We'd love to answer questions, reply to your comments, and we'd love to feature some of your stories on the podcast, because this is a communal way of learning and enjoying and oversharing, feeling seen about something that maybe you have never talked to anybody about. We want to hear about that sort of thing. We love it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's get into it.
Let's do it.
I don't know what to expect.
All right. So just warm up. What's the latest picture in your phone?
Oh, Ruby and I took a photo shoot together.
A photo shoot.
Yeah. Yeah. She wanted to do dress up, so I had her tiara. Oh, okay. Most recent photo is her making a fire with my neighbor, Kristen. And she is wearing her brand new patent leather fancy shoes. This is my daughter, Ruby, who's 7, about to be 7. Her fancy patent leather shoes that she was doing gymnastics in. A pair of dirty shorts that she pulled out of the dirty clothes, and bunny ears.
That's great.
Yeah.
She's a fashion inspiration.
She is. It's getting weird, and I love it.
I'm here for it. Who was your first celebrity crush?
Maybe Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh, which one?
Well, Titanic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. Like, I don't think that's my actual first crush. My first crush in my entire life was my stepdad Scott's best friend, Cardi Talkington. I was probably
Cardi Talkington?
Yes, he's amazing. He's a musician. He made the film Love in a 45. He was cool.
Yeah.
Really cool. and I was probably 5, and when you twist the apple stem,
Uh-huh.
I made it come off at C.
I don't understand what that
D
means.
do you know when you do the did you do this as a kid?
No.
You hold the apple stem and you twist your apple and you go A, B, C, D,
Oh,
and the letter that it falls off on is like your true love is
oh
the
my
first
god.
letter of your true love's name.
I never heard of that.
Oh, yeah, I don't this is my only memory of interacting with that game, but I twisted A, B, C, and at C, I pulled it off.
It seems like C would be a
It w
common name
well,
to
and it would fall off very easily at sea,
right.
but it was I mean, I was 5 or 6. We were still living in Texas, so I couldn't have been older than 6.
Like, as a robin, I feel like I would never be anybody's soulmate
No,
under those
no, it's a
or forget about if you're Zelda.
ridiculous game, but
Um,
yeah.
so wait, so what was it about Leonardo DiCaprio, though?
Well, okay, here was my teenage years, like preteen years, burgeoning sexuality. I believed you had to be straight, even though my uncle was gay. So he really paved the way in my family. I believed you had to be straight. So therefore, I had to be attracted to men. And so then it was very effeminate men
Right.
that I was attracted to. And the only, like boyfriend, I had like kind of boyfriends and not really, like everyone was having sex. I was not. But the boyfriend that I had in high school who I really thought I loved was a dancer.
Uh-huh.
He had this like masculinity that was so, I mean, my gay best friend who I didn't know was gay, everyone else knew he was gay. Also, at a period of time I thought I was in love with. So there was this like, okay, I could be attracted to boys as long as they were very, like, in touch with their femininity or their physicality was feminine. Lanky bodies was
Uh-huh.
really a thing for me, and then that changed once I realized, like, "Oh, it's masculinity I'm attracted to." So now, like, the women that I'm attracted
Right.
to are disrupting traditional notions of femininity. And I think that that is at the core of my sexuality is some sort of disruption of like that is a through line between everyone I've been attracted to, everyone I've been in a relationship with, is that there is some sort of gender fuckery
Right.
that's happening.
I love that. I imagine Leo at that time, he had a very, like,
Very
really
pretty.
very pretty and
Yeah.
really, like, having the hairstyles and the general style of what young lesbians or dykes are
Yeah.
doing at that time.
Yeah.
Like, the Bieber haircut was the
Yeah.
baby dyke haircut of that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So I could imagine yeah, Leo, that's really great.
I know.
I love
So
that.
silly. But also, Kate Winslet in Titanic for
Right.
me, I think was the first time that I was like, that's the gender that I want. And I
Mhm.
didn't realize that at the time. But she was so high femme. She had some curves,
Yeah.
which is ridiculous now when I look
Right.
back. I'm like,
Right.
she did not actually have curves.
Right.
She just was not completely stick thin.
Right.
So for me, I was able to attach to her. So there was something between both, like she was sort of high, like imagine her as the high femme and Leonardo DiCaprio in that film as the like kind of scrawny dyke
Right.
or something. And that, so that held appeal for me. And I had no idea what that was about at the time.
Yeah. What was your first mode of masturbation?
Oh, you are going to love this.
I can't wait.
So I consider myself to be a real late bloomer.
Mhm.
And like I said, I was not having sex in high school. However, in the 3rd grade,
What?
mhm, we moved every year. So my childhood is broken up by grades. I can't even tell you how old you are in the 3rd grade, but I know I was in the 3rd grade because my friend, and this is also true for me that like I had a friend
Mhm.
because I was always the new kid in school and I changed schools a lot.
I relate 100%.
So, my friend was Andrea. I think it was Andrea. And we just became really tight. We would make up dances in the backyard. My mom made us some costumes. We would dance to like Madonna, Janet Jackson, Paula Abdul. We'd
Yeah.
do dance routine and we did sleepovers. And so she taught me this thing that she would do, which is she would get her doll and she'd turn all the lights out and tell a scary story
Wow.
while humping her doll.
Oh, I love it.
And I didn't even realize until becoming, like, a sex educator that I was masturbating at that
Yeah.
age, didn't even occur to me. And I had a Cabbage Patch doll from childhood. The Cabbage Patch dolls had very hard plastic head,
Right.
so you could hump them.
I love this so much.
Really well,
Yeah.
and we would tell each other scary stories about, like, witches in the forest and it being dark, and I can't even remember if we did this a whole bunch of times or if it was just maybe once or twice, but it had a very lasting impact, and it helped me realize that the humping orgasm is something that a lot of people, I think, have a hard time, like, maybe getting to the point where they accept is their mode of getting off.
Mhm.
But there are certain toys like the Leia Spot. Once I saw that toy, I was like, "Oh, that is like a bulbous, hard toy that curves that you can lay on top of and hump." Anyone who is a humper, when I share this with them, they feel so seen. And had it not been from that, like, 3rd
That
grade
hard little head.
experience of masturbating that way, I would not have learned that that is, like, a totally valid way to get off, and yeah.
I have multiple things to say in response. One, it's I'm reimagining the Toy Story movies now, if they had been in your bedroom.
Mhm.
And two, I've been thinking a lot about the shape of the clitoris
Mm,
and how we now know that it is so much larger and
mhm.
wraps around the opening of the vagina. And I've been thinking about the homologous,
I
homologous,
I call it analogous, but I do think it
homoanalogous is what I want to say,
homo-analogous.
but it's homologous. No, I recently was trying to,
Okay, we have
anyway,
to look up the
ugh,
pronunciation of this word. I
homologous. Anyway, the
homologous.
corresponding
Okay,
parts
yes, yes, yes.
between the, penis and the vulva or the penis and the clitoris and thinking about how it's really like the shaft of the clitoris just enwraps around and is basically the whole vulva. And it was making me think about how humping, I had always kind of like not related to that much. I'm like a tip of the iceberg kind of person, like clitoris tip, tip, tip all the time. But I've been engaging more of the entire vulva lately because my sexuality is starting to change for a
Mhm,
number of reasons, and I'm kind of rediscovering a lot of things. And I was thinking about how humping is really like stroking a cock type of thing,
mhm,
and that
mhm.
knowing this information now about the true shape of the clitoris is making me think like of ways I can change and diversify my stimulation with this new knowledge. And that, I don't know, it just makes me think of that with this humping thing of like, yes, of course, humping makes total sense, but it's not generally thought of as something that females do.
It's interesting because young children, you will see, like, 4-year-old
Mhm.
will gravitate to, like, the corners
Mhm.
of furniture and sort of rub on them for comfort. And what usually happens is that someone comes along and shames them for that and says, "Don't do that, that's not," and it's equating it as masturbation. But
Mhm.
actually what it is it's an indirect access to those very sensitive nerve endings,
Mhm.
and I've learned so much because most of my friends are tip of the iceberg, click, 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 clit,
Yeah.
like, give me direct clit stimulation all day long kind of people. And that's so fascinating to me because I never use a vibrator
Mhm.
above its like lowest setting, or very rarely do I. I often will use pressure on the pubic mound when masturbating, either just with my hands or just take a toy and put it onto my pubic mound. I've tried wands because everybody says, "Oh, wands are the
Right.
best." I have to put, like, multiple layers of objects between me and the wand
Sure.
because I am not a clit gal. Like, that's just not that I don't love external stimulation, I do, but you cannot put a vibrator directly onto my clit unless you're trying to torture me,
Yeah.
and, I mean, in which case, pro tip, now you know.
So so what stimulation does do it for you?
I get off mostly through penetration.
Interesting.
Well, I know it's so I'm like I never share that when I'm teaching because I feel like so many people are having to work against the
Right.
assumption presumption, expectation that you can get off through penetrative
Mhm.
sex. For me, it's absolutely how I get off. And like the deeper, the harder, the better. I love I love urethral sponge, like
Mm.
shallow targeted urethral sponge stimulation. That can get me off. But like my go-to is positions where something large and long
Mhm.
is thrusting pretty hard into, like, the very back of my vagina, like,
Like the A spot.
yep, getting to that back side of the cervix. Like, my girlfriend says to me all the time, like, "Where does my cock go? I don't understand
Right?
how you take this."
Yeah.
And there's just something that happens for me, like, once I get aroused, like, my vaginal canal really stretches, and, like, I'm like, "Get it all the way back there, please."
Okay. So I know this interview is about you,
Mm,
but I am a Leo. So
yeah, yeah.
I'm going to talk a little bit about me. So I started taking Lexapro because 2020 and and
The
other
never-ending 2020.
and other things, which has been a great help to me. But I had this period of about 3 weeks where I could not orgasm. I would try and try and try using all my usual things, not happening. And then there was a breakthrough that actually almost broke my body. I was literally hobbling for 4 days,
Okay,
but we had this
in a good
break
way.
we yes, well, it was pain but anyway, so we had this sex where it felt all I want. I was like, "You gotta go deeper and you gotta go harder. Deeper, harder, deeper, harder, deep bam, 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 bam," and I was responding usually I'm like, lay back and, let this sex wash over me kind of person, but I've lately been turning into this hitting back on him, and because I it's like this itch that I need to scratch, and
Yep.
I'm like, "Get it in there harder, deeper." I cannot get enough, and that's what I ruined my hip flexor because I overexerted myself and I was literally limping for
Okay,
4
okay.
days.
Yeah, so it wasn't
But
your pussy that was aching,
no,
it
my
was,
puss
like,
was
you threw
fine. Yeah, no, she's real tough. So, I had this orgasm that I felt all of those missed orgasms came all at once, and
Mm.
it
How did
shook my body. It was this
Yeah.
crazy full body orgasm seizure.
Yeah.
And then it happened again, but not I mean, it was very intense, but it wasn't like that. It like that first one was a breakthrough, I think. So anyway, I think I'm turning into more of like a vaginal penetration person, whereas I've always been a tip of the iceberg person. Anyway, I'm just gonna have to ask you more about all of that because
Yeah.
I do feel like I'm in a different body emotionally now
Mhm.
and sexually.
I think too, we should definitely get into this sometime in depth because there there's all this information that's out there around, like, what are the different types of orgasms? Let's classify them. And I think that that can be difficult for people because it kinda creates this scenario that there's, like, division between them.
Uh-huh.
But I think actually what happens is that there is just so much potential in
Mhm.
our genitals for varying layers of sensations and pleasurable experiences. And when you are investing in your sexuality, you get on this almost like ebb and flow. It's like an ocean where it morphs and changes and then you return back because like certainly I have experiences where I have I have a partner now who loves oral sex.
Mhm.
I mean, she loves giving it, she loves receiving it, and that was hard for me when we well, not it was not nothing about our sex life was hard for me when we first got together, let me clarify
Right,
that.
right, right.
But it was this thing of, like, this is so hot to her that I need to just give over to having this experience. Not that I love eating pussy, but as far as receiving, it's just not really my go-to.
Mhm.
And now I experience very satisfying orgasms from oral sex that have just never really been in my repertoire. And it's
Right.
not that I don't think that they weren't there or that somehow, it's like this really different kind of orgasm than the other orgasms I have. It does feel a little different, but it's just because I'm getting stimulated in a different way. And there's all this space now for that kind of exploration in my sex that I used to be like, "Oh, no, I can't. I don't get off that way."
Right.
Or like, "If you're putting your mouth on my pussy, you better also have, 3 fingers inside me," or whatever.
Right, right, and I
Yeah.
think that's what's so it is like a sexual journey or like you're
Mhm.
saying, this waves because you do return and your path is winding and might return to certain spaces, but it does seem endless.
Yeah,
I feel like the
it can
more
be.
you explore, the more there is.
Mhm.
It's just and it's ever evolving and changing, so it's we do have to rediscover our bodies on a regular basis.
Yeah, and but that is true of everything. I
Yeah.
think some people think, "Oh, I can't go on this journey. It's just I don't have orgasms or I don't have intense orgasms." And I had a period in my life where I sort of said to myself like, "I'm never going to get into a really excellent workout routine."
Right.
And then guess what? My fucking life fell apart and it was like I needed it and I just invested in it regardless that I didn't have a workout partner,
Right.
and I made a practice of it, and now I'm someone who works out 5 days a week
Yeah.
because it makes me feel better, it makes me feel more whole. So it's a practice just like anything else, and I think that because there's so little information that we're given, and also now the access to the information is censored so heavily,
Mhm.
it's just never gotten integrated into our, like, communal vernacular. So people think that it's this unicorn wor like, having a really involved sexual practice is
Yeah.
just something that other people do.
Right, even just the idea that all of our lives are constantly evolving, our bodies are constantly changing. When I was younger, I thought, "Oh, this is when you are an adult. Now you're an adult, you're living your life." And it's kind of centered around the idea of when you're in your 20s and 30s, that's when you're you, and then you start becoming old or whatever. That's when your sexuality
So fucked up.
happens, and then it starts going away
Yeah.
or whatever, and it's like, man, I'm glad I didn't peak in my 20s. And in a lot of ways, even the way my body looks and things like that, it's changed, but I'm really loving it at the same time. I mean, there's the days where I'm like, "Oh, wow, I'm 100," and then there's other days where I'm like,
I
"Oh, I feel like
blew
I'm
out my
really
hip
finally
flexor
blossomed."
having
I
sex.
blew out my yeah, it's the oldest thing to do, right? Is to, like, mess up your body through
Yeah.
sex. Anyway, will you describe to me what orgasms are like for you?
Ooh, an orgasm for me is one of the few moments in my life, in my day, where I release.
Mm,
So there's this holding that happens for me pretty consistently, and an orgasm cracks all of the walls that contain it all. And there's just flow.
mhm,
And it's flow of sensation, connection. I am tapped into the love of the universe. I am my best self. If I'm having sex with a partner, my partner is their most open,
mhm,
connected self. And it's like I imagine, when a soprano hits that just like perfect note at kind of the top of their range
mhm.
is what it feels like. It is like my chest is singing release, openness, but also, this just receptivity. It's a give take, energetic experience.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I feel like it gets to, for lack of the better word, like close to God type of experience, which
Mhm.
is part of why I find it so baffling that it's so hidden and that we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
I wanted to read something. I'm reading a book called The Lost Art of Listening, and the writing is questionable at times. But there's this phrase that I wanted to mention. In the presence of a receptive listener, we are able to clarify what we think and discover what we feel. Thus, in giving an account of our experience to someone who listens, we are better able to listen to ourselves. Our lives are defined in dialogue. And I think it really gets into the issue that we as a culture have with sexuality. If we are not talking about these things, listening to you talk about your orgasm, it's different how I would describe it, but it's also profoundly resonates with me.
Yes.
And it's, if we're not talking about these things, imagine we're living a world where we never talk about our sexuality, and how alienating and lonesome that is,
Yeah.
especially amongst our peers and like our gender or whatever. To not see that out in the world and hear about it is remarkably sad to me.
I, as a queer person, really am resonating with what you're saying because I was not able to know myself until I had the shared
Yeah.
experience with other queers. And and like I said, my uncle was gay, he paved the way in my family. I was not up against this mountain of, I mean, granted, a lot of my family is from the South, so there's stuff there.
Mhm.
But it wasn't this like life or death. My family's gonna disown me
Right.
if they realize that I'm gay. We had to go through our own battles, but I wasn't able to be whole until I had the experience of sharing with other people, hearing about their lives, and then that got so wrapped up into sexuality for
Right.
me, and it gave me permission to finally be a sexual person, which I had not had up until that point.
But that brings me into my bigger question for you,
Okay.
which again, I'll start with talking about myself. So I grew up in a way where, well, my mother grew up with a high femme mother. And she was very critical and like would stuff my mom's bra and like also and put, do all sorts of things to her in the 60s that my mother hated. Like my mother had to wear, as a 5-year-old girl, she told me she would fall asleep on her face. She would form pillows around her face because she had to wear these curlers in her hair that hurt her
Oh.
head. And that to me is just the epitome. And, you see pictures of her in the 50s and she has these Shirley Temple kind of curls and looks like
Mm,
that perfect little white girl in the 50s.
mm,
But I mean, it comes at a price. So by the time she was an adult, she had rejected all of this femininity.
mhm.
And it was also at the time of, the rise of feminism. And she wanted to be a working woman. And she really felt like she had to present in a more masculine way. I mean, she would wear the business suits. I mean, the, skirts and stuff like that, because it was required
Right.
in the office to do that sort of thing. But as soon as she didn't have to, she was in suits. I remember distinctly her going out to a New Year's Eve party wearing a tuxedo. And
Mhm.
I was like, that
Uh-huh.
is it. I remember thinking she was so hot in that. And, it's weird to think your mom's hot, I
Yeah,
guess, but whatever. She was.
not necessarily.
Not
Yeah.
necessarily. Shaming myself. So, and then my father has a kind of typical kind of a boomer man kind of entitlement mixed with resentment around women. And so growing up for
What a
me,
wonderful combination.
right? So for me, I really felt like the rejection of femininity was basically in my household an insult, and I tried to completely reject it in order to not get dragged down by it.
Mhm.
Like I almost didn't want people to know that I was female,
Yeah.
and then doming really helped me try to find a power position with it. But still, men are coming in and paying you to be a sexualized bitch.
Right.
And that's still kind of under the patriarchy's foot. It's within the patriarchal structure.
Yep.
And so I still struggled with that. And I would say once I met you and a few other high femmes, but particularly you, showed me what femininity could be
Mm,
in this like other way, that it could be a choice, it could be a power
mm,
play in
mhm.
real life, not just under the fake patriarchal structure,
Yeah.
that it could be an expression of oneself and that it could be glorified.
Mm.
Drag queens show me that as well,
Yes.
where for a while I was like, I want to be a drag
Yeah.
queen, will they let me?
Don't we all?
Because you can take all the trappings, enlarge it, and make it into this fantastical, mystical being. Um, and it's really queerness, the idea, even learning the term high femme,
Mhm.
I was like, "Yes, that's
Yeah.
what it is." And I view you as a power femme. The way you were coming into the office, and last time we talked, you said that you were 25 when you started running the pleasure chest. Is
Yes.
that right?
Yes.
Crazy to me that 25, I was like high at Burning Man. That's all I had going on. Um, but I remember you showing up to the office, and there would be times where I'm like, I would feel like I do not have it together. Like it was all I could do to drag my ass out of bed and maybe brush my hair and put on whatever like sloppy outfit to go to work. And you would show up in this, I'm like, "This bitch has it together. She knows what she's doing." It gave off this aura of, "If I can do all of this, I can do anything. I am
Mm.
showing up
Yeah.
for this shit,"
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
And there's so much power. It wasn't diminutive at all. It was empowering. So my question for you is, what is your connection, your growth into your space, your view of femininity?
Oh my gosh, there's so many layers to that. I mean, it's so funny. I'm wearing jeans today.
Yeah.
And that at that time in my life, wearing jeans was like I had a pair for when we had to do physical things. And also, like, let me just be clear, like I really appreciate people who can be casual, but I would not give myself permission to do that. I would never come to the office in jeans.
Why?
Because so there's, like, a few layers to it. Mostly my relationship with my femininity is very empowered. But I think in that professional context, it was a bit of a shield
Yeah.
in the sense of, my grandmother, my nana, was high femme.
Mhm.
And so she's the one who gave me a connection. My mom has a similar experience to your mom where, she was a costume designer. She's retired now, but like she was never showy with her fashion. She wore all black.
Right.
It was fairly neutral. It wasn't that she totally rejected her femininity, but like she and my aunt, I have photos like I'm a baby and my aunt is repairing her car, right?
Right.
So they were not femmy, but my grandmother was very put together. Her husband died in the Vietnam War. He did not need to go. He was 39. He left her with 5 kids.
Oh,
She had to get a career real fast,
yeah.
and she worked her femininity in a male-dominated world in a way where she let people believe that she was subservient,
Right.
but it was survival for her.
Yeah.
So there are ways that I think that that seeped into my consciousness around I am really deeply connected to my femininity, and this is a way that I can show up and be professional, have everything together, have my makeup done, and this makes me feel empowered.
Yeah.
Wearing shoes that make noise on the ground while you're
Mhm.
walking around. So there is some posturing to it.
Yeah.
And I think I'm in a place now where I'm having to try to like there was so much of this stripping away. Like I feel like my life got kind of stripped down to the studs, and that's not a bad thing.
And what do you think did that?
Oh my gosh, so many things. Getting divorced, leaving my job of 11 years, going into COVID as a single
Yeah.
parent, just having started a business that
Yeah.
was not off the ground yet, being in a relationship with a partner who then experienced really traumatic
Yeah.
losses and having to like be in that grief space with her. Like all of the posturing is out the window at that point. Now I'm sort of back to this place with my femininity, which is more of my true relationship with it, where I am very gay, like so gay. I love women.
Yeah.
I love having sex with women. I love being in relationships with women. And I also came into my queerness in the early 2000s in Portland, moved back to Los Angeles where there was just this like really strong andro
Right.
vibe. If you walked into a space and you were feminine, people were like, what, outright shaming you.
Right.
And I had my first love really gave me a lot of positive reinforcement around like my dyke phase
Mm.
and moving away from my femininity. And my body rejected it. Like everything in my whole being rejected being disconnected from my femininity.
What did that, anti-femininity phase look like?
A period of time I was really playing with, like, keeping my hair really short, but staying very strongly connected to my femininity, but I was, like, suddenly like, "Oh, maybe I'm not straight, maybe I'm gay, so maybe I have to let go of some of this femininity in
Mhm.
order to embody this queer identity." This is a very common experience for a lot of
Yes.
femmes.
It's a common assumption, I think,
Yes.
and that's what I was thinking, like, when I started coming into that, like, queer space, it's like, "Oh, I can be as masculine as I want,"
Yes.
but then these high femmes would start coming in, and I'm like, "What is this?"
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that that first heartbreak, really feeling like some of my rejection was centered around my femininity. And then I there were these bastions of light, like the Miracle Whips, and I love burlesque, like even like straight femme performers. And I was like, no, no, no. Like if gender is a
Right.
performance, then we also get to perform our assigned gender. This gender for me is intentional. And so I think at the stage where then I'm in this work life, it's like, "Oh, but I also get to do this work drag?"
Yeah.
Yes.
Work drag, I love
This
that.
is like this is everything for me because I get to have this kind of like high femme persona of my grandmother
Yeah.
that I idolized, but it was not in a subservient stance.
Yeah, and I would say your presentation, had a lot of that, like, somewhat retro, but very modern at
Mhm.
the same
Yeah,
time, and doing
yeah.
those kinds of cuts that really, like, flatter the body type, and I just it's very interesting.
There is a body image thing to it though too,
Yeah.
where I felt, I've never been skinny. And when I was being sort of pushed more into a masculine identity, the way that society is like, well, you now don't have any sexuality at all. And I
Right.
was becoming so in touch with my sexuality. So, this like kind of stripping away of sexuality, I just had to then find, I'm like, no, like I am a curvy, feminine person who also wants to perform my so it was this mix of a whole bunch of things, like wanting to feel empowered in my body, wanting to feel empowered in my identity, and wanting to feel empowered in my sexuality, and that's what femness for me
Yeah.
is it's this, like, intentional assertion of the intersections of all of these aspects of my identity.
Yeah.
My confidence really started to grow. And that's what I think of like my early years back in LA being, it was just like this real confidence builder
Yeah.
and being like, I am a very sexual person. I am a very queer person. I am a very performative person. And I turned down my graduate program at Columbia in social work
Wow.
to stay in LA and make clothes and wait tables.
Fuck yeah, I'm glad you did.
And I took a job at Babeland,
Yes.
and my parents lost their goddamn minds, and I found myself.
Great. I fucking love it.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like what I learned from this conversation is even people who seem like they have their gender presentation all kind of worked out, it is really this fluid process that we arrive at in that moment and that is constantly moving and changing. Like I do still think of you as this like super high femme, but now that you're talking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, there has been a lot of like life things that you do seem not relaxed, but just like you're not putting on as much like costumery as you used to, but you have a different
I know.
life now.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
also I wonder about like, where it's going to go over time. Like I always imagine myself over time, I'm going to get, as I get older, I'm planning on getting louder. Like I've told Max, like it's going to get weirder as we go on. I do always feel like my presentation is always a little bit defiant,
Yes,
and maybe I
yes.
should start trying to think more about other ways to please myself instead of being like, "You're not gonna forget about me as I get old."
Well, I think there was something earlier that we were talking about with, like, aging, and I'm like, "Oh, we
Mm.
have not even gotten to the stage where I can't wait." Like, I feel like the sexually empowered, personally empowered seniors that I know or have come across, like, are just like, "Oh, you don't even know what sexual exploration is," or, like,
Oh,
the stripping down of all of the expectations or the things that hold you back or whatever. I think for some people as they get older, they just get more and more and more and more themselves.
yes.
And I think about that coming of age in the 20s and 30s. It's pressing. Like you have to know yourself. You have to explore all of these things. And for me now, where I think I've, like, relaxed a little bit on, like, gender presentation stuff is just that, like, it will always be there.
Yeah.
It still exists, it's just sometimes, like, the performative stuff exists a little bit more in those private spaces, being both, like, my sexual exploration with a partner and also play with my child.
Yeah.
I forget whenever I'm, like, sort of at my wit's end of, "Oh, what parenting tool can I use right now?" Or, like, "Thing can we do?" I'm like, dress up. You know, it's like it is such a natural space for us to go
I
into
love that.
together, and it's so fun, and I realize that it keeps me connected to that part of myself too, and we do it in a way where I feel like it's not making her a pretty, pretty princess.
Right.
It's like it gets weird too,
Yes.
and it's really like, she did this makeup technique the other day that I was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna have to explore this." She did really bright eyeliner or eyeshadow, like that place on your between your cheekbones and your
Uh-huh.
eyeballs, and it was weird, but it was so
Oh,
cool, and I
love
was
it.
like, "I feel like this is gonna have applications in some other costume at some point," but that play with her definitely keeps me very connected to that high femme stuff, and the costumes and the things that are put away get to come out. They're not taking over my closet anymore, they're more kinda, like, under my bed, which makes me sad, but it's the reality of having a small space. It's the excuse to bring that stuff out and the reminder that it will always be with me.
Oh. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this with
Yeah.
me.
It was a
Yeah.
blast.
Fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah. Robin,
Mhm.
I have a wait. What?
Ooh, I'm
For
so
you.
excited.
I this is gonna be a little ranty though.
Ooh, my
So,
favorite. You know
yeah.
I like. Is it a feminist rant?
It's yeah, it's multi-layered.
Excellent.
Have you seen the Fexi commercials?
Um, yes. I actually really like the Fexi commercials.
They're great,
Yes.
right? Can
I
you describe them to anyone who hasn't seen them?
Okay, well, first, I wanna go into my childhood
Okay, yeah, sure.
because everything starts there. I Dream a Jeannie.
Oh.
That room that she had inside the bottle, I loved so much, and as an adult, have thought about it as basically a metaphor for her vagina,
Oh,
and I
I'm
always
gonna watch
felt
that
like
with
I
you guys.
wanna live in this genie's vagina. It's the coolest room. But that's what the Phexxi commercials remind me of, where I'm like, "Oh, Alexa" is it Alexa or Alexis in the
Alexis.
Alexis is in her vagina, and it reminded me in the palette and a lot of the furniture was very I Dream a Jeannie, and I was like, "Yes, I'll go into Alexis's vagina as well," you know?
Yeah, she, is such a perfect like, the ad campaign is fantastic. I love
Yeah,
it so much. I love her, I love the room, and I was like, "Ooh, I cannot wait to research this innovative
yeah.
new birth control. You are selling me on it. I'm
I
all about
I
it."
was into it because I was like, this is what this they're targeting me." Yeah.
Yes. Really smart advertising.
Mhm.
Do you know how Phexxi works?
No.
You're gonna be mad.
Ooh.
You're gonna be so mad.
You like getting me mad.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I'm gonna give a little bit of backstory.
Okay.
This is like a, tech company, like sort of med tech company with a lot of, in the business world, the information they have going out is it is a woman-led company. All of these investors came around to support her concept and it's going to
Yeah.
revolutionize birth control.
Sounds great.
It's so fantastic, right?
Yeah.
Except the revolution in birth control, I'm going to read to you how they describe it.
Okay.
And you're going to know right off the bat
Oh boy.
what's up, I think. But the average person is not going to know this from how they describe it.
Okay.
Phexxi is an innovative gel that works by maintaining vaginal pH.
Okay.
No hormones needed. Phexxi doesn't cause weight gain, mood swings, blood clots, and is completely hormone free. Use only when you need it. Phexxi is used in the moment right before each and every sex act. Once in the vagina, Phexxi works immediately and lasts up to an hour for each act of sex. No daily commitment required.
Okay. Go ahead. I have comments.
So, it immediately addresses a lot of the frustration that people have with hormone based therapies. I get it. And you don't have to take it every day. There are, some people have varying degrees of reactions. Trust me, I was put on orthotricycline to regulate my period when I was in college. I had 10 years of yeast infections
Right.
after getting that birth control. But
Can I just make a comment about
please,
the language? This
yeah,
annoys me so much because I'm like, can we just say what you mean? After each sex act, you can use it up to it works an hour, use it per sex act.
yeah.
Okay, what is a sex act?
Mhm,
You're talking about ejaculation
mhm.
in a vagina.
But that's the only real sex,
Right.
Robin.
Well, and that's what's so annoying about that kind of verbiage. Not only, well, great, you finally said sex instead of each time being intimate, which would be more annoying. And that would be very 10 years ago. But it's like we're still not at the space where you can say, after each time you have sperm in your vag,
You
it's
can
like,
reapply it.
I'm sure there's a nicer way to say it than I did, but
And, they're saying no need to rely on a partner to bring a condom. No need to head into the doctor's
yeah,
office for an
'cause
injection
so
or a
many women
procedure.
so many women are relying on their partner to bring a condom. Yeah, for real. Like,
Yeah.
oh my god.
So
Anyway, all right,
this is
but that's
annoying
to the
to
point.
me that essentially what this functions as is like to relieve the dick from having to do anything that it doesn't want to do so that you can prevent pregnancy. Now, here's the thing that is really interesting. The innovative gel works by maintaining a vaginal pH. So, what I did a deep dive on this.
Mhm.
It changes your pH in your vagina so that sperm cannot live in there. What does this do to your overall vaginal health over time? Because we know that delicate pH in our vaginal canals can influence things like bacterial
Right.
infections. pH can also, if you are someone who has chronic yeast infections, can kind of mess those things up as well. But especially with bacteria, you want your body to have a normal pH in order to maintain your overall health. So why are we so thrilled and excited? We now have a gel that's going to fuck with our pH so that it kills sperm.
So, but it's saying that it maintains a pH, but
Yeah.
actually what they're doing is changing your pH.
Yes.
That sounds like a disaster because I can't even use soap that isn't pH balanced.
So we're taking the
So,
issues that
yes.
exist from hormone therapies and we are potentially replacing them with new issues. And I am not saying that we shouldn't have both options on the market,
Right.
but people need to be informed and understand that this doesn't mean that you're going to have a symptomless birth control. A truly innovative birth control would be figuring out how to do something with a penis
Yes.
so that
It's like they're like, "Okay, the way we're gonna solve the problem is to go to the most complex ecosystem
yes.
in the body."
Yes.
And it sometimes it seems like the only real interest in, women's health is around preventing birth.
Yeah.
You know, it's not around, vaginal health and everything. It's like, I'm starting to get the past couple years, like, I've had chronic yeast infection problems mixed with, like, bacterial infection and, like, back and forth and all of this stuff, and I never dealt with that before. It's almost like as soon as yours dried up, mine started, so thank you for that, Sarah.
Yes.
But, but nobody's being, like, really taught about this stuff. They just throw medications to, like, get the problem to go away, but it never totally goes away unless you have a healthy ecosystem.
Yeah.
And all of these birth control, including condoms, fuck with that ecosystem.
Yeah. I wanna be clear here that I'm not saying that this might not be a better option for some people. Some people have much less
Right.
sensitivity to, like, their pH being messed with. And some people go through hormone therapies and don't have a really bad response to it. So certainly if you're someone who's not responded well to hormone therapies, as a form of birth control, give it a try, but go in informed knowing that there are side effects to messing with your pH balance.
Yeah.
You're going to be opening yourself up to more bacterial infections.
My understanding is the idea of the pH in the vagina being a certain level is to maintain the flora,
Yep.
to keep the bacteria at bay, keep the yeast happy, and everybody but also allow for it be the right pH that sperm doesn't get totally decimated.
Yep.
But it actually does destroy a lot of sperm.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, it's frustrating. I feel frustrated. I don't know that there's a perfect answer to this, but I don't want to be sold this like miracle cure that then just actually replaces the existing issues with a whole host of other issues. Yeah, because nothing is sexier than getting a bacterial infection after every time you fuck. I'm hoping that there are some medical providers out there that are gaining some good knowledge about this and helping people navigate if this really is a good choice for them.
Yeah. And then all of the, STI issues that can come from that also. I mean, if you're not whatever.
Yeah, it
You're not
doesn't.
using barriers in the first place. So,
I do think that they are promoting it not as an STI
sure.
prevention. This is really for fluid bonded folk.
Yeah.
That was my really fun. Wait, what?
I love a rant. I love a rant. Well, Sarah, we did it again. I learned a lot about you. I really appreciate what you were saying about how femininity formed in your life, how it's been able to be a tool, sometimes a mask, sometimes armor,
Mhm, mhm,
but at its
mhm.
core is really an expression of self. And I've learned over the years from you literally how to do that sort of thing. And I don't know, I just loved hearing you talk about it, learning more about you.
I learned, or perhaps was just surprised. Maybe it's that thing that you really take for granted when you exist within your own identity, your own lived experience. To just that, like, it's unique to have the kind of connection that I have had to my femininity over the
Hmm.
years. Like, seeing that kind of mirrored back in your questions and just in how you've responded to things over the years. It's like, oh, every now and then, it's just nice to have people reflect back to you that, like, oh, that is, like, a really authentic, unique we don't understand our own uniqueness.
Hmm.
And I guess I hadn't really thought much about that being something that was as deep. I mean, I obviously think of it as being deeply empowering, but that's sort of my connection to my gender and my gender expression
Mhm.
being such a, authentic thing about myself. I don't know. It was like a really nice reflection
Yeah.
on all
And
of that.
it's a kind of, hearing that feedback from people, it's like a validation, not necessarily that you're doing something right, but just like an acknowledgement of who you are, you know? And of course you're doing it right. But I mean it in the way
Yeah.
of like, I'm not approving or disapproving. It's just like, here you are. That's so interesting. It's different from how I do things and I don't
Well, and I do think that there can be so much stacked up against us.
know. Mhm.
And being there's so, so many societal expectations,
Mhm.
then you have familial expectations, then you get into social groups and there's social pressures. And it was a nice reminder to me of like, oh, right. Sometimes overcoming all of these pressures, like that in and of itself, just being your true authentic self is an accomplishment.
Yes.
After we had that conversation, it actually took me back to a much earlier conversation we had had when we developed our negotiation to impact
Uh-huh.
series,
Yeah.
where we were talking about kink dynamics and fantasies of old and if they still serve us and all this sort of stuff. And that time I was really getting deeply connected to like my femme dominance rather than
Yeah.
this more submissive role that had been kind of projected onto me because of my femininity.
Mhm.
So I've actually been steeping in a lot. I've been thinking about that a lot and like, okay, it is definitely a call to action for me to be thinking about what are some ways to be more intentional right now around my femininity, both in like kind of performative play, in just like existing out, like the world is opening up, getting back out
Yeah.
there in this way because it is deeply empowering. Why am I not trying to source that energy
Yeah.
as much? So yeah, did feel inspired.
I will say I've been feeling inspired in that vein as well, as far as, my own look, because it has been, so long of not interacting with the world, and now that I'm starting to do it and enjoy it, I'm like, "I gotta chop my hair up, I gotta bust out my eyeliner." I just bought some, like, hardcore black lipstick. I'm planning
Yes.
the Dyke Day LA event's coming up. I'm like, "I'm gonna black out my teeth and paint my lips black and have a good old time at a daytime beer bust."
Yes. Well, and there is so much obviously like fashion and the mainstream interpretations of this are really vapid, but there is so much value in like finding your personal
Yeah.
style, expressing. Not everyone relates to how they present externally as like a source of empowerment,
Mhm.
but I do think that people who think about it with intentionality and like originality, it's like really deeply ingrained part of our identity.
Yeah.
And it's we've lived in like sweats
Ugh.
and indoors for a long
I'll tell you what,
time.
I cannot wear regular pants anymore, but I am out there looking for the fancy sweats that I can wear outside the house and not feel, like, totally sloppy. I'm thinking about it more in this, like, art expression. For me, it's like what I'm wearing and what I'm putting on my face has a lot to do with, like, art, and so even when I'm picking up the kids, I'm like, "Ooh, I think I'm gonna wear these, like" I'm gonna wear my boots and my, skeleton shirt or whatever, and, like, put on some actual makeup this time of just but, makeups for me is, like, just half a stick of eyeliner, and then out to and here we go.
We both wore eyeliner today, in fact,
I
which
know.
I'm really proud of us
Well,
for. But you have please tell me that cat suits are still on the table. If you're ditching regular pants,
Oh, but cat suits are
please.
comfortable.
Okay, okay, yeah,
No.
because this is like a signature, your cat suit.
I mean, if it was just the day to day and it didn't matter who was around me or who was seeing me, I feel like a like cozy cat suit, like a velour cat suit would be my go-to. I actually don't feel that comfortable being totally naked, and it doesn't have to do with body insecurity necessarily, but it's more about a I like clothing touching my body. I like
Mhm.
soft things touching my body. I'm wearing velour pants sweatpants right now, and I would love to be encased in that.
Yeah.
but in kind of tight.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wish I had fur is what it comes down to. I wish I was furry, like a short hair cat, sometimes a long-haired one.
Oh, I love that.
Anyway, off topic,
Uh,
off track. Thank you everyone for listening.
yes. Yes.
I hope you have furry, comfortable times with the aesthetic that you enjoy the
Mhm.
most.
And maybe it's just your own body hair.
Yeah, and please tell us about what you do for your cozy, comfy aesthetic or your going out art piece or whatever you want to tell us about, what your fuck yeah moment is this week, what you're feeling good about, things that you want to tell us about, what you heard on the podcast. We want to hear about it. We want to share it on the podcast. So please let us know.
And we are going to have a guest next time. We're so excited. We're not going to reveal anything else other than that, except stay tuned because we have a very exciting guest coming your way.
Rate, review, subscribe, like, friend.
Fuck yeah, pod. That's where we are. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Knocking them out of the park.
Fuck Yeah podcast is produced and hosted by me, Sarah Tomchesson, and Robin Jennings. Theme music is produced and performed by She, Her, Sir. You can find out more about what we're up to at fuckyeahpod.com or reach out directly at fyeahpod@gmail.com. If you're enjoying the pod, give us a hand. Rate, review, subscribe wherever you listen, and make sure to share it with a few friends. Thanks so much for tuning in.